Hi, I'm Angie Smith. I'm Women's Officer for Wealdon CLP in East Sussex. I also work for a domestic violence charity, and I've just completed a master's degree in women and child abuse. I'm a proud member of Unison and a domestic violence survivor. I would like to speak in favour of the plans to reform our social security system, which Margaret Greenwood has just announced. Comrades, I have spent the last 9 months researching the impact of welfare benefit reforms like the introduction of universal credit and the benefit cap on domestic violence survivors for my dissertation. I surveyed frontline workers and interviewed survivors. I can't distill 99 pages of research into 3 minutes. Here it is. But I do want to tell you some of the key findings. First, universal credit. My research found that abusers were using universal credit as a tool for coercive control, often forcing women to live on allowances that weren't enough to buy even nappies for their kids. Just as seriously, many workers had encountered women whose perpetrator had spent the housing element of universal credit, leaving women with rent arrears, making it extremely difficult to rent a new property, effectively trapping women within the abuse. I also heard about women who were scared to leave because they didn't want to take the risk of being plunged into poverty by universal credit. And unfortunately, often these fears were justified. If women did leave, they found that the delays in universal credit meant they had no money at a time when they were highly traumatised and had often been forced to leave virtually all of their belongings behind. They were left reliant on local welfare schemes, where they still exist, or food banks, hence the title of my research. The food banks have been great, though. It probably won't surprise you to learn that also there were instances where the universal credit system itself was broken. Job centres failing to tell women about the domestic violence easement that gives them a break from the work-focused conditions. I interviewed 2 women who couldn't read or write English, who were forced to use the online universal credit system. One was getting her 11-year-old son to do her job searches for her. The other one's refuge worker was helping her out. But both were terrified that they were going to be sanctioned in the future. Perhaps most frighteningly, I also heard about women who had been told to return to the home that they'd fled to collect their documents by job centre staff. Universal credit certainly wasn't the only welfare reform that was impacting women, though. I heard about women whose perpetrators had tried to force them into abortions because they didn't want to fall foul of the 2-child limit. So many women who I encountered couldn't leave abusers or were stuck in refuges as they couldn't afford to rent property because of the welfare benefit cap. And for those women who did manage to source a home, there was the terrible impact of the decimation of the social fund, ending crisis loans and community care grants, meaning that women were unable to furnish a new home. In the worst case scenario, moving into homes that had no carpets and not even a stick of furniture. Conference, the system is letting down traumatised and abused women and children. This is so much more than universal credit. Labour needs to be the force against all welfare benefit reforms. My message is, let's unite and let's fight for real hope and real change. Thank you.